right, thanks everybody, and thank you for having me back. I'm very fortunate to be up here today with my friend Jason Daly from Meta. The topic, of course, is brand equity, as you just heard. We have been, for the last several years, we've been discussing with, many of you actually in this room and many of our clients, full funnel marketing, right? How do we make that real? How do we make that operational? And how do we ultimately bring a similar level of rigor to that idea and to building that source of value as we typically and traditionally have done in the area of performance? Your platform, of course, is one of the most important surfaces globally.
I'm glad that you believe that.
Introducing brands to the world, to consumers, and for shaping and for forming brand identity. What are you hearing from Meta advertisers on this topic of full funnel and on the topic of brand building and brand equity?
Yeah, well, thank you, Sean, and hello, everyone. Delighted to be here. You're a very good-looking crowd. But we're very basically hearing the exact same thing. A lot of brands are concerned with how do they understand the interactions between their brand dollars and their performance dollars. How do they focus on short-term goals while also thinking about the long term? And so just a resounding yes, these are the things that are really top of mind for CMOs and marketing directors and CFOs. And so the reason why I'm here specifically today is because the collaboration that we have with Tinuiti has been really pivotal in helping us as a platform to delve deeper into understanding really what is the true impact of brand equity on revenue and business outcomes. And your team's collaboration and your expertise has really been instrumental in helping us shape our approach and how we think about going to market. I think maybe for the audience, it would be helpful if I spend a little bit of time just talking about how we think about this. And at Meta, we really do truly believe that brands matter more than ever. And they're really at an inflection point where this idea of building long-term brand value is not just a nice to have, it really is critical to the success of your business. And so the reason that we're here and the catalyst for all this change has really been driven by all of these changes in the marketplace that are happening at the same time. And so you've got changes in consumer behavior. So we're all doing things differently now, especially coming out of the pandemic. You've got this well-documented shift away from linear television. You've got the shift to digital and changing shopping preferences. And although it may be hard to believe, people still cut coupons, they still go into the store, but it means something different for them now. You've got changes in the business environment that we're all dealing with. So you've got inflation, you've got cycles of economic downturn, you've got concerns about the election, you've got decreased availability of capital. And then you have all of the changes, if that weren't enough, that are happening in our industry that we're all very familiar with and we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So the long-awaited death of the cookie, I think that showed up a couple of times on the screen. You've got signal loss. You've got the impacts of AI and how is that going to inform your business and also your team's processes. You've got continued consumer fragmentation. And then you also obviously have a lot of increased privacy regulation. And so within this complex environment, it really is our belief that most agencies and brands really need to reconsider brand building and how it can not only help you mitigate the challenges that these changes create, but also that you can capitalize on the opportunities that they're going to also afford you. The challenge is, and I think one of the reasons why it's great to have the audience here today, is that most businesses and companies are not in a position to do this well and to do it effectively. And the reason why is, as you kind of heard, brand budgets still sit in a building away from performance budgets. Usually those are in the basement. You've got the online folks who don't talk to the offline folks or the in-store folks. And on top of that, measurement protocols and practices just really are ill-equipped for the task. And so if you focus just on brand, it's kind of foolish. And if you only focus on traditional DR tactics, without thinking about the impact of brand, it's short-sighted. And so our belief is that what the clients and the brands in this room and what agencies need is a contemporary, future-oriented brand building strategy and measurement approach, basically the thing that you just talked about, the thing that you're building at Tinuiti, that delivers results for you today. So you want to make your CFOs happy, but it also incorporates and takes into account long-term brand building value and its impact on the future. And so we were both trying to figure this out and come up with solutions to how to address this challenge of valuing the top of the funnel. And so based on our partnership and the strength that we have, but also our confidence in your capabilities, we decided to go on this journey together. And it really started with 2 questions. The first being, does actual brand equity impact business outcomes, right? Like, it's nice to talk about brand and brand love, but does it really drive your bottom line? And then secondly, if so, how can you use media to improve brand equity? And so we did some research, which is good. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, of course, happy to. In some ways, I feel like brand equity. If some of you remember back to the equation from 20 minutes ago, this is like both our easiest problem and our hardest problem at the same time. The sense in which it's the easiest problem is, I don't think, I've had conversations with some of you individually about this. It's not a very hard sell to marketers that brands matter, right? Or just to human beings that brands matter, right? Like, we all kind of understand this, we believe this in our bones, we experience it every day. Like, this is just a very important source of enterprise value. So that's the easy part. In other and very important ways, like, this is actually definitely our hardest problem, our hardest question to answer, because, well, for a whole bunch of reasons. So one, all of you marketers in the room, it is relatively straightforward. You can go into your data warehouse and say, how many people downloaded our app yesterday? How many people, bought something? What's their LTV? And so on and so forth, right? Like, the fundamental data points are available to basically everybody, and you have them at your fingertips. If you then say, well, now I want to ask a question about aided awareness or consideration or something like that, like, that's generally not going to be in your data warehouse if you're running a digital brand, right? So just getting to that starting point takes some extra work. I was just discussing this last night with my friend Graham, right? Like, you got to just get to that point before you can even begin to ask the question. Secondly, it's just a very different kind of problem, because if we think back to the good old days, right? You've got cookie to cookie matches, you've got IDFA to IDFA matches, right? That's like relatively straightforward stuff. There really is no like IDFA of brand equity, right? It is a more kind of amorphous problem for us to solve. So briefly, the way that we go about this, and I promise I'm not gonna, I've made some commitments to my colleagues. I'm not gonna go very deep into the technical weeds here, although feel free to book a session with me if you're interested in that. What we're really trying to do, and this is the actual architecture of the product, is to answer 2 questions with two models that interrelate. So the first big question is, how does paid media impact brand equity or a specific brand health metric? So think of something like aided awareness, consideration, purchase intent. Linking these inputs and outputs, right? If we think about this as an input-output, equation or function, is very technically challenging. For a whole bunch of reasons. One of the big ones is that brand metrics are slow moving, right? So whereas you might run an ad on TV or put an ad on Meta or something like that, and you see a response in a few minutes, a day, 48 hours, something like this, you're not going to run an ad on TV and see a spike in your brand awareness the next day, right? Like, these are really cumulative effects that build over time. So how you really uncover this, or how you establish a causal connection econometrically, is a very challenging part of the equation. But that is what the first module, the first model in this process is built to do. And this is where our econometrics team collaborated very deeply with the core research team at Meta on how do we do the underlying, essentially math and statistics to understand the causal relationship, not just understand, to quantify the causal relationships between the money I as a marketer am spending on television, on streaming video, YouTube, Meta, TikTok, Amazon, all the rest. How is that impacting longitudinally these brand health metrics that I think are important to my business? And what we want to come out of that step with is answers to a couple of questions. So one, well, what does it actually take, just in broad strokes, to move the needle on these outcomes? So if I have a goal to increase aided awareness by 3 points, Like, what is that gonna take? Is that take $1 million, $100 million, somewhere in between, right? So like, get to that order of magnitude so that I at least understand what I need to be prepared for, what I need to be like armed with, if that is actually an objective that I'm gonna go pursue. The other set of questions that we want to have answers to coming out of that first model are a little more fine-grained, which is like, what are the levers that actually help me to do this, right? So it's like, okay, it's great if I can understand it takes $10 million to increase aided awareness by a point. Even better if I can understand, well, okay, you know, I don't know, maybe programmatic display and affiliate, like they're not really driving brand metrics much, if at all. But you know, things like television, things like Instagram, things like YouTube, it's like, okay, these are introducing my brand to the world. They're rich formats, they can tell a story, there's a consumer experience there, like those really do move the needles, right? So okay, if I want to invest in my own brand and I want to move these metrics, now I know not just spend more money, I begin to have a pretty good idea, this is how I should spend.
Get more of a little bit of a dashboard in terms of where you should be placing those bets.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, actually, we can be quite prescriptive about this, right? What is the triage or what is the waterfall of channels that you really want to invest in if you are attempting to build your brand, if that's the goal. Now, the second question is, of course, like, should I do this, right? Like, so let's say it is going to take $10 million to increase aided awareness by a point. Should I do that? Am I going to get $10 million in enterprise value, or however you want to denominate this, as a result? What are the trade-offs there? And so the second thing, or the second piece of this architecture is to establish the relationship, and the critical thing is the independent relationship between these brand health metrics, things like aided awareness, consideration, and so forth, and a business outcome like revenue, right? And this is another very tricky econometric question. You know, basically, your problem is, again, you have slow-moving metrics, and you know, as all of you marketers who have done this kind of modeling know, everything is correlated with everything else, right? So you need relatively clever identification strategies. This was another one of the core areas of technical collaboration between our team and the research team at Meta. But what we're really trying to understand is like, okay, once I have accounted for the fact that I am investing in paid media and that is driving outcomes in a relatively direct fashion, right? So basically, these are the results of my performance marketing. And then there are other things that I'm doing that are helping to drive revenue. What is the independent effect of these brand health metrics on this fundamental outcome that I really care about? Again, you know, revenue or some sort of bottom line business metric. And really the goal is we want to get to the point where we can say, okay, it's going to take, you know, $10 million to increase aided awareness by a point. We want to be able to say, well, that additional point of aided awareness is going to yield $5 million of enterprise value. So you should probably just take the money and keep doing performance marketing, which has a positive return, or it's worth 20 or 30 or $40 million, and this is actually a really great use of your resources, right? And so when we talk back to the notion of full funnel marketing and how do we make this more than just words, this is the basic idea. This is how we cash it out with product, right? We want to be able to say, you have $1, you can spend it in a performance channel, you can spend it on a brand channel. And by the way, many channels do both, right? So you're getting yield in from multiple sources on that dollar. But what are the, somebody used the phrase like hidden sources of return, right? I'm sure many of you have had the experience that you say, okay, we're going to do a big push in upper funnel, and the way that you traditionally measure things, whether it is an MTA model or you're looking at, spike metrics or something like that, it looks like this has terrible ROAS, right? The CPM was high and the number of conversions was large, but not large relative to the amount of investment. Oh, that was a bad choice. That was a bad investment, right? I would say if we have one kind of fundamental goal with this product, it is to bring a more sophisticated lens to that kind of question, right? And it is absolutely not to say, oh, all of your brand investments were great and were worth it and don't worry about it. but it is to just come up with the correct answer, right? And to say, yes, maybe in the short term, it didn't drive the same number of conversions or the same efficiency of conversions in the first 24 hours, but what kind of value is this creating over time that may be harder to measure, but could be orders of magnitude more important over the long run in terms of building the business.
And I think in addition to the sophistication, one of the things that we hear is brands don't have 9 months to figure this out, right? Like they need to figure it out quickly because the markets are changing so fast. And so it can't be cost prohibitive, and the cost to do the work can't be more than the benefit, and they need to be able to get results in a timely manner. And I think that's also where the solution that you're building actually provides a lot of value for clients.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, we don't need to talk too much about the data, don't think. I think you all understand this conceptually. I mean, there is an important point here, which is that there is not a generally correct solution to this problem, by which I mean your mileage may vary, right? The potency of a brand is not going to be identical or even close to identical across different verticals. So if you're in food and beverage, if you're in apparel, if you're CPG, right? Or even within those verticals.
Depending on like if you're a new product or a new brand that just launched.
Yeah, price point, new product, all the demographic that you're targeting, right? Like the answer is gonna vary, and it might vary wildly from brand to brand, right? And there may be a class of advertisers where it's like, look, yes, you can spend money and you can move these metrics, but it is ultimately not as accretive in terms of overall value to your business as pounding out the hard yards in performance marketing. Just go keep doing that. There are going to be other cases where there are genuinely outsized returns to building that upper funnel and establishing an identity and a presence as a dominant brand in the category. So different way of putting this maybe is like, it's an empirical question, right? And what we want to do, what we're aiming to do, is to help you all understand that on an individualized basis using your own data and training these models so that we can understand what are the trade-offs and what is the most intelligent way to navigate those trade-offs and like really be full funnel marketers in the true sense of the phrase. Let's see. Oh, I think I was supposed to show some of this. Anyway, again, please do, here we go, here's the QR code. Please do book a demo if you are interested in this topic. We're very proud of this product. Again, we think it is, if you think back to that equation, this is probably the hardest one. This is the most challenging one for a whole host of reasons. We wouldn't have spent the, 18 months or 2 years on this product or whatever it's taken, if we didn't think it was genuinely of potentially extreme importance, right? Like when we think about those different sources of return, we know there are cases based on the research that we've already done and the models that we have already built. In some cases, this is really, really material, right? If you fail to understand the returns that are generated through this, let me actually go back one. No, where was it? I don't know, forget it. Through this brand channel, right? Building a brand and then having that generate results over time and having that make you a more effective performance marketer, right? Because when you do have a strong brand, your performance marketing efforts are really pushing on an open door rather than pushing on a closed door. So again, the research that we've done already is at least for some brands and for some class of brands, this is a very material source of returns, and failing to understand it or just sort of mentally rounding it off to zero is going to cause you to make a lot of the suboptimal decisions, right? You're going to invest too little in your own growth and in your own business, and you are going to invest in some of the wrong things, right? When we think about how do we really maximize that holistic ROAS equation. And so again, what we're aiming to do here is to bring as much clarity as possible. And I want to be realistic about precision here, right? Again, back to my point about this being the hardest problem. We're under no illusion, I'm under no illusion, you shouldn't be under any illusion that we're going to get to the third decimal point of precision here, right? We're talking about genuine upper funnel brand metrics, but if we can bring rigorous quantification to that last term to that fourth term, we think we can bring better clarity and ultimately better business outcomes as we optimize this holistic ROAS equation.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Really appreciate, again, your collaboration.
Of course.
And I know sometimes research like this can be messy and a little bit ambiguous, but your team was great. And so looking forward to doing more in the future.
And likewise.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.